really important in our city council chamber and actions. We saw that when we come together and sit down together and work together, we can find common ground to get things done. That when we aspire for a higher level of debate and conversations, because our challenges are too great to do anything else, we can make progress. That we shouldn't mistake heated debate for a lack of progress on the toughest issues we face. We must remember that strong opinions and disagreements does not mean we cannot come together to do important things. Over these past few weeks, we saw what happens when we can come together, sit down together, and work together. We can find common ground to get things done. And there's no doubt about it, it wasn't easy. This was a tough debate, not just here in City Hall, but all across this city. There are very strong passions and genuine policy differences between neighbors, businesses, friends, union members, council members. Seattle does not lack for passion. But frankly, I think it shows that Seattle has proven that we are a lot different than some of the other political debates in this country. We have shown that we can come together and get a solution instead of simply name-calling, bickering, or tweeting at one another. There is nothing wrong with passion, but at the end of the day, we must find ways to break through our disagreements, to sit down and to listen and then to act. Passionate debate and difference of opinion are part of who we are as a country, as a state, and as a city. But disagreeing is easy, sometimes too easy. Coming together for a common purpose is harder. But if we don't do that, we will never move that common purpose. I think that we have proven that here in Seattle, we can be different and we can work together. I'm here because, like in any joint solution, people from all sides of the discussion came to the table. You heard today in the council debates, and you will see it in neighborhoods and restaurants and streets and communities throughout this, that people will still continue to disagree, whether we got it just right. But I think that's okay. We've shown that if we listen, we can move forward and we can act. And today, I think we will take a very important step moving forward to tackle those very challenging moral choices of our time regarding homelessness and housing affordability. We have to address the housing crisis in a meaningful way. The spirit of our work today cannot stop today. If we want to do more work on this defining challenge of our times, we must continue to try to find ways to work together. It will take our whole city, our whole region, trying to find some common ground. From the beginning of this debate, I have believed that there was a path forward to lift up those people who were left behind and still protect family wage jobs. I have literally heard from thousands of people from people in Seattle, from businesses of every size, from dozens of unions, from advocates, and through it all, I think we shared the same goals. Keep a strong economy, help the thousands of people experiencing homelessness, and make Seattle affordable for everyone, for residents, artists, businesses, from people from every walk of life, every economic background, and every race. We know too many people have been pushed out of Seattle, and too many others can't find a place in Seattle. We have to change that. So my priorities were finding that right balance between our progress on affordability and the homelessness crisis, while protecting good family wage jobs and our economic vitality. Many of you know I lived in this city during the grimmest downturn in the history of this city, where literally hundreds of people were put out of work overnight and fled the city. That is not on the horizon, but I am aware every time we make a decision, what will the impact be on those people that have the good working class jobs in this city? I think we can make progress on a joint solution around homelessness and affordability. I think our path forward reflects the priorities and will help us make progress. I'm very grateful that the council worked closely to do the following things. First, to protect most of our small businesses. If you'll recall, it was the initial recommendation of the Progressive Revenue Task Force that 97% of the businesses be taxed or pay a fee. Today's bill doesn't do that. It exempts most of the small businesses and nonprofits. The bill that was passed includes a sunset clause and expires after 5 years unless renewed. This is an important feature because it will require us as a government to show that our investments are working, to show that we've made a difference, and to also show that we haven't had any unintended negative impacts on jobs. This excludes a payroll tax, unlike previous versions. This was important because that would have cost the city millions of dollars to implement. This changes that. I want people to make it very clear, I plan to sign this bill. I think it represents a true shared solution. It lifts up those who have been left behind while also ensuring accountability and transparency. Let me be clear. We have a lot of work left to do to move people off the streets and into safer places. There are approximately 4,000 people living unsheltered in Seattle. In the coming weeks, I will be announcing a plan to bring hundreds of people, hundreds of our neighbors, inside from my Building to Bridge for Housing, which unanimously passed the council earlier this year. I'm also focused on accountability and transparency on how this new revenue is going to be used. I've heard Seattle loud and clear. They are concerned across the board whether the city of Seattle is using their money wisely, efficiently, and responsibly. I can tell you, I have been told over and over again by people, I would pay more if I thought it would work. But I don't know that it's working. It seems the more I've paid, the bigger the problem has gotten. We as government have an obligation to show people that we can make a difference. That's why, as your mayor, you have my word. I'm taking a hard look on all of the budgets for every city department to scrub them to make sure that we're using money wisely and efficiently. We're looking at the money that we're spending on homelessness right now to know what's working and what's not working. While the council was deliberating, I was meeting with the head of our Human Services Department to go over where we were on our accountability, to see what services were working and moving people into homelessness and what weren't. As a city, we have to know that our strategies are going to work. So the people of Seattle have my pledge as their mayor. I am going to work as hard as I can to make sure that every penny is spent wisely and efficiently and makes a difference in our city. There's a sunset clause in this, which I think is important. During negotiations, I thought this requirement one was important, and I fought for it. We have to make sure that a tax doesn't just go on indefinitely, that there are investments we make that are actually working. You know, there's a saying that the definition of insanity is you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. As a city, we have to start doing different things if we truly want to create a more affordable city and if we want to move the dial on homelessness. I will be creating an oversight committee to ensure that we're delivering on the results and that we can show the people of Seattle how the money is being spent and whether it is working. We will be working with an economist, and I'm very committed to continuing to make sure that as we implement this tax, we are very, very careful on a couple of things. Number one, we have to make sure that what we're doing actually helps. If we're going to be collecting tax dollars, we want to make sure that what we're doing actually helps on affordability and helps on moving people out of homelessness. The second thing we want to do is make sure that there are not any unintended impacts on our jobs or our economy. So we will be monitoring those things throughout. I also think it's very important to say that this has to be viewed in context as a regional effort. We must create efficiencies in our system, but we also know that creating efficiencies alone is not going to solve this problem. It's why I recently signed a memorandum of understanding with King County Executive Dow Constantine to create a framework for a regional approach to address this crisis. We know that this crisis does not stop at our city borders. Homelessness and affordability is a regional problem. And as Councilmember Johnson said, when we've been faced with those regional problems before, we do big things. We need to come together as a region to address this, and I am looking forward to working with the City Council to make sure that we are pushing the county and the state to do their part. Looking ahead, I will be focused on acting urgently to move people off our streets into safer places, to clean up the garbage and needles that are in our parks and our communities, and to provide resources for those people experiencing homelessness who deserve and need those resources. I will continue to push for a regional response because Seattle cannot go it alone. We can't go it alone on affordability or on solving homelessness. This is a regional crisis that demands a regional response. Our capacity literally has not kept pace with our growth or what's happened here. As part of this conversation, I'm glad last week in speaking with the governor that he was willing to commit $40 million of additional resources for behavioral health to send to King County. With our work with King County and our memorandum of understanding, we will have a framework to make sure that those behavioral health dollars go to the most urgent needs we have in Seattle and across the county. Earlier this month, as I said, I signed the memorandum to have a framework for regional approach, and we will continue with the one table bringing people together. That process will bring together businesses, philanthropy, service providers, and others. We have some of the finest minds and hardest workers here in Seattle. It's time to put them all to work together in solving this problem. In the upcoming months, we will also need the help of the legislature and the cities in this region, and I will push for more funding at the state level and for more progressive approaches to this. We simply have to have more money for affordable housing, mental health treatment, and services for people experiencing homelessness. We also have to harness the private industry. I'm in discussions with a number of people who want to bring to the table ways to build middle-income housing in the city of Seattle so that this city can remain a place where people who work in the city can live in the city, and those who couldn't live in the city can find a home here. I want to thank Council President Harrell for his strong and steady leadership over the last few weeks, and for all the council members who worked so hard in the last few weeks to find common ground. We listened and we acted. I want to thank council central staff and also in the mayor's office for the long, long hours and late nights we spent, not just over the weekend, but over the last 2 weeks to get this done. I also want to thank the advocates on all sides, members of my Small Business Advisory Council. From the minute the initiative, the ordinance was proposed, we brought them together, got their input, and their input actually was one of the things that led to most small businesses being exempted. I want to thank the trade unions, service providers, the people experiencing homelessness who came and spoke with us in this very room just a few weeks ago. At the end, I mostly want to thank the people of Seattle. Your voices were heard during this process. I know there will continue to be heated and passionate debate about these issues and about how it was resolved here today. I urge you all, keep the passion, but please also listen, because only if we start listening together can we work together to solve the challenges of this time. Seattle has always been that city that has invented the future. And I believe we will never stop being that city. We will continue to be the most innovative city anywhere. We invented the aerospace industry, the cloud, the coffee on every corner, the bone marrow transplant. We will be the city that cures, not treats, cures cancer. We also have the best restaurant in the country, some of the best chefs, some of the best artists, writers, and musicians. With the solution today, a partial solution, I believe we can move forward and start harnessing all the great talent in this city. Let's put all the great talent to work to really address that challenge of our times. And with that, I'd be happy to take some questions.
Will any of this money be used to backfill programs for which money is running out that are already being funded, like you're building a bridge to Housing for All and like other programs in HSC, or is it all going to be used on new programs in housing?
As you've seen, that the council itself could not agree on the spending plan, and over the next 2 weeks we will be reviewing the spending plan. I have some concerns because council did fund a number of programs, including shelters and supportive housing, that does not continue in funding. So I think we need to work together over the next 2 weeks to find the best place to implement this plan. So we will work with them together to find the best path forward.
There seems to be a disconnect between how large of a portion your office and the council wants to spend on permanent, like building new housing. Can you sort of go into why your original proposal had 30% of that funding going towards new affordable housing, where they kind of wanted closer to 2/3?
Yeah, the proposal that the Councilmember Harrell proposed last week, it had a lower amount for housing in the first years, but higher in the following years, because I think the people of Seattle think we've got to start making a real difference on homelessness tomorrow. We need to get people out of tents, out of cars, and off the street. We need to get them a safe place to live. None of this housing that will be built with this money will come online for years, because we have to find sites, we have to get permits, and we have to build it. We can't expect people to keep waiting in tents, doorways, cars for 2 years. So we had an emphasis on planning up front that would make sure that we had enough resources to actually help people experiencing homelessness today. The final ratio that we will end up on, I think we're much closer. Over the weekend, we proposed with the council that we would have a ratio of over 50% going to affordable housing. But it's important to keep this in context too. As many of you know, our Office of Housing issued an RFP for affordable housing to see who would be ready to build new projects. In the last few weeks, as we were having this debate go on, our Office of Housing has been working very hard to go through that list to determine what projects are really going to be ready. Do they have control of the ground? Will they be able to get financing? Is it something that's feasible? We've gone through that list and identified a short list of those projects that we think are most feasible. Together with the money that's in the housing process today, with what we're going to get from the levy, we think we can clear all of the units on that list in a very short period of time. So we were very focused not just on what was the amount, we wanted to know what could we accomplish. And if you have money and can't spend it, it doesn't do any good. So we wanted to make sure that we adjusted both the revenues and the spending side of it, and that we could actually turn the dial. The other part of this that I think is really important is King County has indicated they are going to be a full partner in this process. And the one table process will be real. They are already indicated that there's sites within Seattle and outside of Seattle where they will help fund and find place for shelter for people. We know that Seattle has the vast majority of all shelter beds, and that a significant number of the people that the residents of Seattle are paying for services and housing and shelter don't come from Seattle, they come from other places in the state and the county. It's time for the rest of the county and the rest of the state to step up and to shoulder their fair share of this so that we can tackle this issue together.
Mayor, what about the business community? Amazon obviously has been a big part of this discussion. They've already released a statement saying they're disappointed by the council's action that Block 18 construction will resume, but that they are questioning their growth here in the future.
You know, I have spent time with everybody in the spectrum in the last 2 weeks, talking on the phone and meeting with them. Small business, medium-sized, big business. I've also met with labor unions, advocates, and the like. I am quite confident that as we move forward, we can continue to have the best city anywhere for people to do business. And so I will be working with business to work with them to show that this is the city where where their workers are going to want to be. And that's why they're going to be here. So while I know that businesses did not support this, I also am glad that they've agreed that they will continue in the construction so that we maintain those vital business trade jobs. You know, meeting with the iron workers and carpenters and talking to them about what those jobs mean for them and their families, that was a huge priority of mine, to make sure that we could keep those family wage jobs here in Seattle. As everyone in this room knows, our businesses have started to skew tech heavy. That's just who we are in this changing economy. I want to make sure that we keep our good working jobs, industrial, building trades, and then we couple that with great apprenticeship programs and with college opportunities for every kid in Seattle. The long-term solution to affordability in Seattle is economic opportunity. Absolutely no question about it. We have to make sure that every kid growing up in Seattle not only knows they can be, but actually can be anything they want. That's why our Seattle Promise is such an important part of our tackling affordability. We want those kids to get the ticket that allows them to get the best jobs right here in Seattle.
You see that it's a reasonable response, but some council members have pointed out that other local governments haven't stepped up as much as Seattle. Is there any political capital to ask for more countywide, and what would that look like?
I think there absolutely is in having these dialogues, but I will say this. If we keep paying the bill, there's no reason for them to step up. And I think that's one reason why we have to make sure that we keep the pressure on all the other parts of the county and the state to ensure that they know that Seattle will not continue to shoulder 100% of this burden. It has got to be shared. We know that more and more people throughout this region are experiencing homelessness. We know that affordability is becoming an issue up and down the I-5 corridor. So if we don't start to roll up our sleeves together and tackle it together, we'll never get in front of it.
I heard you saying they need to tackle it together, but we did hear a lot of disappointment today. People saying with this compromise going from 500 to 275, because they said the problem is not a $50 million one, but more like 400 million. What do you say to people who say what was decided today is really just a Band-Aid?
Because there is no silver bullet or magic wand that's going to solve this problem overnight. Even at the highest levels, it was not going to solve the problem. So what we have to do is be able to pull together, bring common ground together, and move forward together. Because if we don't do that, if we fracture along lines, we'll never make the progress that we need. And so no one is saying that this will solve everything, but it will make a meaningful difference, both in terms of getting people off the streets and into safe places, and to be able to do those buildings that we know are ready to go. With the revenues in this project, together with our housing levies, we will be able to move through almost all of the projects that will be ready to go. Before that, we don't have, and after that, we don't have capacity right now of any that are in line. So we want to make sure that we then go to the legislature, and I've already begun those discussions, both with Speaker Chop and with the governor, on how we make sure that we start getting more resources from the state for this problem, and that the region steps up to have more affordable housing, more support for people experiencing homelessness, not just in Seattle, but throughout King County. One last question.
People have called this a Bezos-Durkan deal. Are they right?
This is a deal that 9 people voted for unanimously because I thought it was the best thing for Seattle, and I agree with them, and I'm going to sign it. Thank you.